Welcome back to another episode of Scoreline Sports. And this one, I'm going to be reviewing this weekend's blockbuster four top 10 weekend for college basketball. Some incredible matchups this weekend. Like I said, we got four top 10 matchups. This is going to be a great weekend of college basketball. I'm going to be going through every game that involves Power Six conference teams, but obviously some of these games are less important, so I'm going to be going quicker through those ones. Then at the end, I'll give my predictions for the top 10 matchups. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting in the AFC, we have Virginia Tech taking on Miami. Both teams searching for wins as they try to improve their tournament resumes. Miami, obviously, not the team that they were last year when they made that run, but it's never too late to go on another run. Virginia Tech coming off a tough loss at home against Duke. I'm going to go with Miami in this one. Then we have Virginia taking on Clemson. I know Virginia has not, they've had a decent year. Clemson started off incredibly, and they've kind of came down to earth a little bit, but they're still in tournament contention. But I am going to go with Clemson here, being that this is a home game. Next, we got Georgia Tech and NC State. I'm not really familiar with either of these teams too much, so to be honest with you, I'm just going to go with NC State here. Then we got Notre Dame and Pitt. I know Notre Dame is not having a good year. Pitt, they're having a decent year. I'm going to go with Pitt in this one. Syracuse and Wake Forest, both teams fighting for tournament wins to improve their resume. This one's at Wake Forest. I think Wake is favored by like 16 or something. But I'm going to go with the surprise upset here and go with Syracuse because I just like what Syracuse has been doing. And I think they got the potential to win some big games, and I think this will be one of them. Next, we got Florida State at Louisville. Louisville just is a mess right now, really fallen from grace after that incredible season in the COVID year. And Florida State also fallen from grace from where they were during those years, being like a consistent top 10 team year in and year out. They've kind of fallen from that spot. But I am going to go with Florida State here, just being that Louisville only has like 8 wins on the season. They're really having a bad season. Moving on to some Big East games, we got the number one team in the country, UConn, playing in the Garden at St. John's. This one has actually already started, and UConn is in a dogfight. I think they're down like one at halftime or something. But you have to trust me. I did make these predictions before the game started, so I am going to go with UConn here because I think they got championship DNA, and I think teams with that DNA just know how to win these tough games. And even though it's at St. John's, they're in a tough matchup right now. St. John's, a team that's looking for a huge win to boost their tournament resume, I do think UConn is going to pull this one off. Then we got number 9 Marquette taking on Georgia. Marquette's kind of struggled with consistency after their great run all the way back in November at the Maui Invitational, where they knocked off Kansas. Georgetown, under first year head coach Ed Cooley, not looking great, but I saw something Ed Cooley was telling people to just give it time. So I guess you just kind of have to trust the process if you're a Georgetown fan. But regardless, I'm going to go with Marquette. I think Tyler Kolek is one of the best point guards in the country, and I think they'll get the win. Next, we got Xavier at DePaul. This one's not a very interesting matchup. DePaul, obviously, one of the bottom feeders of the Big East League for many years in a row now. Xavier, not nearly the same team they were last year when they obtained the 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, but I'm going to go with Xavier in this one. Next, we got Providence taking on Villanova. Villanova down to 11-9, I believe, or maybe 12-9, after they had that great start, winning the battle for Atlantis. So they are really searching for some answers here. Justin Moore still with this team. So is Eric Dixon. I think Villanova is going to take this one over Providence. Moving on to the Big 12, the best league in college basketball, we got Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State not having a great year at all. Kansas State kind of in the middle of the pack of the Big 12, just fighting for wins. It is so hard to win in this league, so really any win, any game, you can't take it for granted. But I do think that Kansas State is going to pull off the road win against Oklahoma State because I don't really like what I'm seeing from Oklahoma State. Next, we got the Texas Longhorns traveling to TCU to take on the Horned Frogs. TCU has really been on fire these past couple weeks. They won against Baylor, then they knocked off one of the hottest teams in the Big 12 in Texas Tech. So they're really playing well right now. Texas has kind of been struggling a little bit to find their identity and their consistency. They have the playmakers, right? Max Asmus, Tyrese Hunter. Uh, they really have the players to really get this thing going, but they just haven't so far. I do expect both of these teams to make the tournament, So I wouldn't be worried if Texas loses this game if you're a Texas fan, but I do think TCU is going to win this game. Next, we got Oklahoma taking on UCF. Oklahoma really has been struggling after that incredible start to the season. They've lost quite a few games in their last couple weeks. And UCF, on the other hand, obviously a newcomer to the Big 12, Johnny Dawkins, working to get this team up to the level of competition that is required when you join a league like the Big 12. And I actually think that UCF is going to pull off the upset win, or it actually might not even be an upset win. They might be favored in this one. I didn't check the line. But just because Oklahoma has kind of been struggling a little bit of late, I think this is a great chance for UCF to get the win. I think they're going to do so. Next, we got 23rd ranked BYU traveling to West Virginia. Obviously, West Virginia, one of the worst teams in the league, maybe the worst teams in the Big 12. Um, so I think BYU will get this one pretty handily, even though it is a road game. Next, we got Cincinnati and number 15, Texas Tech. Texas Tech coming off a tough loss on the road at TCU, but they are still playing really good basketball. So definitely don't count them out even after that loss. They will definitely win this game against Cincinnati. I really like what I'm seeing from Texas Tech, and I think they got a real potential to be a top contender in the Big 12. Then we got our first ranked versus ranked matchup of the day where Iowa State travels to take on Baylor. Iowa State has really just been playing incredibly this past month. They knocked off Kansas at home. I think they're undefeated at home this season, which is just incredible. They really are. Uh, Iowa State is truly one of the toughest places to play at. And then Baylor, on the other hand, obviously they started off ranked top 10. They've kind of fallen off a little bit, lost to TCU last week. They're kind of in a little bit of a slump right now. And I think the main thing for them is just, can you let Jacoby Walter, who's their best player, can you let Jacoby Walter get open looks and really elevate his game to help this team out? And I think that's what's going to happen today. I think he'll kind of get his get back, and Baylor's going to win this one. Moving on to the Big Ten, we got Penn State at Indiana. Penn State, I think they have a losing record this year, so they're definitely not a tournament quality team. Indiana, on the other hand, not currently a tournament team, but I think if they were to stack some wins in a league like the Big 12, they could probably get back into the discussion. And so I think they're going to be playing with a sense of urgency. Khalil Ware, one of the best big men in the Big Ten. And then they got the experience with Trey Galloway and Xavier Johnson, and I think that'll come through in a win for Indiana. Next, we got Northwestern at Minnesota. Northwestern, I believe, is currently projected to be in the field. Minnesota is not. So really big implications for both of these teams. Obviously, road wins are so hard to come by in the Big Ten. Um, Minnesota's been playing much better than I feel like people expected them with Dawson Garcia. They've really kind of gotten it together. But Northwestern, on the other hand, I just like how they're playing with Boo Buie, one of the most experienced guards in the Big Ten. And I think Northwestern actually pulls off the upset win on the road. Next, we got Rutgers at Michigan. Look, it's been a tough year for Michigan fans like myself. Just 7-14 on the season. A bunch of second half collapses for this team. I mean, Rutgers, on the other hand, has not had a great year either. They lost a lot of key players. Lost Paul Mulcahy, lost Cam Spencer. So they are not the team that they were last year either. But honestly, I feel like Michigan has got to win one of these games. So it may be biased. It is a little biased, but I don't think this game is very important for either team because I don't think either team will make the tournament. Michigan definitely won't. Rutgers, they're like 10-9 or something, so I doubt they will. But I am going to go with Michigan here. Then we got Maryland at Michigan State. Two teams that are trying to get back to the level of preseason hype that they were at. Obviously, Michigan State was ranked number 4 in the preseason poll. Then they went 4-5. They're back up to, I believe, 13-8. Yeah, 13-8, coming off a rivalry win at home versus Michigan. They just beat Maryland at Maryland about 2 weeks ago, and I don't see anything different happening this time. It's going to be tough for Maryland to win in an electric atmosphere like the Izzone, and so I'm going to go with Michigan State. Then we got Nebraska taking on Illinois. Nebraska, one of my personal favorite teams from the Big Ten. I love what they've got going on down there in Nebraska. Keisei Tominaga is one of the biggest shot makers in the Big Ten, and they just had an incredible comeback win against the number 6 team in the country, Wisconsin. But Illinois, on the other hand, they've got experience. They're long, they're athletic. I really think that Illinois is going to win this one because I think it's important for them to keep their confidence high. Moving on to the Pac-12, we got Cal and Arizona State. Not a very important game. Neither team very good. So I'm going to go with Arizona State because they do have Frankie Collins, and I like what Collins is doing. Colorado versus Utah. Both teams, I really don't know a lot about either of these teams, but I do think that Colorado has some good players that will be able to get the job done on the road. Next, we got Oregon State and USC. Obviously, USC has not lived up to their preseason expectations. Isaiah Collier's been out. He's still out. Questions about whether he will even play for the rest of the season. Obviously, he doesn't want to jeopardize his draft stock too much. And then Bronny James has played all right, but obviously not as good as people thought he was going to play. And it's not really fair to him to expect so much out of him. People forget that he collapsed on the floor just a couple months ago and went through cardiac arrest. So it's really impressive that he's even out here, and it's going to take time. It's a maturation process for Bronny, but I do think that USC is going to get the win here. Next, we got the rivalry game, the basketball version of the Apple Cup, Washington State at Washington. Neither team really of tournament caliber, so I'm going to go with Washington because it's at home for them. Next, we got Oregon at UCLA. Oregon actually kind of a sleeper team in the Pac-12, tied for first with Arizona. I think they are behind Arizona because Arizona has a tiebreaker. And then UCLA just really having a down year this year, lost a lot of key players from last season when they were a 2 seed and lost to Gonzaga in that incredible finish in the Sweet 16. Uh, Oregon won at home versus UCLA about a month or two, say about a month and a half ago, maybe a month. And now they're playing at Pauley Pavilion, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think Oregon gets the win here. Now we got the only ranked Pac-12 team, Arizona, number 11 in the country, hosting Stanford. Obviously, Arizona was one of the top teams in the nation to begin the season. They were ranked one for a short stint. Would like to see them get back to their top game. Still trying to find their consistency and their highest level of play, but I definitely do think they will beat Stanford easily at home. Next, moving on to the SEC, we got Arkansas versus LSU. Arkansas has been really disappointing this year. I mean, they had that great tournament run last year, knocking off Kansas, and it just feels like this team has kind of given up. And I think they're sitting at 11-10 on the season. Definitely not going to be a tournament team. LSU, on the other hand, I don't think they're having that great of a year either. They're like 11, 12-9 or something like that. Um, I definitely don't think either of these teams are that great, but I am going to go with LSU. Next, we got South Carolina taking on Georgia. Georgia with RJ Melendez. He's their leading playmaker. I'll tell you what, this South Carolina team is the real deal, and they were incredibly underrated. Um, they beat Kentucky now. Earlier this year, they went to number 5 Tennessee in Knoxville, and they beat Tennessee. This team only has 3 losses on the season. They are legit. Expect them to be ranked next week, and I think they are a serious contender for the SEC title. So, I mean, they can win at Tennessee. I don't think there's going to be I guess, a hangover, so to speak, from that big win. I think they're going to follow that up with another big road win against the Georgia team, and I'm going to go with South Carolina. Next, we got Mizzou versus Vanderbilt. Now, neither team playing too great this year. Neither is a tournament caliber team, so I'm going to go with Missouri. Then we got Florida at Texas A&M. Florida with a huge win at Rupp Arena, taking out number 10 Kentucky. They've been playing a lot better recently. I remember when I saw them play Michigan, I was thinking this team's probably not a tournament caliber team, but now they've been able to stack some big wins. They're competitive in a tough conference in the SEC, and I think they're going to get the win at A&M today. Next, we got Auburn at Ole Miss. Auburn, number 16 in the nation. They were on a huge winning streak. Came down to earth just a little bit in the past week. Lost a game or two. They're going to be traveling to Ole Miss, but I do think Auburn is going to get back on track and win this one. Next, we got Mississippi State taking on, that should say number 24 Alabama. They're taking on number 24 Alabama. Alabama, obviously, they're not the team they were last year because last year they were the number 1 overall seed. But they are still good this year, and people should not overlook this team. They got playmakers, they're athletic, and they are definitely going to win against Mississippi State. All right, now we are moving on to the blockbuster games, the primetime matchups. Four top 10 matchups this weekend. It's going to be an incredible weekend, starting with number 4 Houston traveling to Allen Fieldhouse to take on number 8 Kansas. This one is on ESPN Saturday at 4 p.m. Kansas is getting 2 points. Look, this is going to be a tough matchup for Kansas because Houston defensively, I believe they're allowing the least amount of points in the in the Big 12. They've got playmakers on the offensive side. They're an experienced team, and Kelvin Sampson just seems to always have this Houston team contending for a league title and a national title. And on the other hand, Kansas, they started off the season ranked number 1. And I don't want to say they've fallen off because they're still a championship caliber team, but they haven't exactly lived up to that hype, and they have playmakers too. They have great leadership in Dewan Harris. They have obviously the best transfer in Hunter Dickinson, and then they have Kevin McCullough Jr., who has really taken on sort of a Jalen Wilson role from last year. And Kevin McCullough has become a very big playmaker for this Kansas team. So it's going to be a tough one. I think it'll be a low scoring battle because Houston is so good defensively. But hey, I'm going to go with the home team. I think Kansas is going to get the big win here. I would not be surprised if Houston wins, but I'm going to go with Kansas in this one. So give me the Jayhawks. Then at 8:30 p.m. on ESPN, we have number 5 Tennessee traveling to Kentucky to take on number 10, the number 10 Wildcats at Rupp Arena. Both teams coming off shocking home losses earlier in the week. Tennessee losing to South Carolina and Kentucky losing to Florida. Look, Tennessee, Dalton Connect, this kid is a just a baller, and I really love his game. I really love the way he plays. And it seems like he's on almost every night, and when he's on, they have a chance to beat everybody. Then on the other end, Kentucky dealing with some injury issues to DJ Wagner and Justin Edwards, but Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepard, the super freshmen, have just been playing incredible. And the thing about Kentucky is, you look at Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepard; those guys are projected lottery picks, and they're coming off the bench. So this Kentucky team is just absolutely stacked. And I think when they are in full force, they are one of the best teams in the country. And I think it's going to be a home game for Kentucky. They're going to have momentum. And I'm going to go with Kentucky to win this one. Then on Sunday, 1 o'clock p.m. on CBS, we have number 2 Purdue traveling to take on number 6 Wisconsin. Purdue coming off an incredible overtime win against Northwestern. Wisconsin they blew a huge lead at Nebraska and ended up getting shocked by the Cornhuskers. So their confidence may be shaken a little bit, but I mean this is still a great Wisconsin team. These are the top 2 teams in the Big Ten, but ultimately I just think Zach Edey is obviously a force that you always have to take account of, and there are just so many playmakers around Zach Edey. You got Braden Smith, one of the best point guards in the country, Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Kaufman-Renn, Mason Gillis, guys that can light it up from the 3-point line. I just think this Purdue team is the most complete team in basketball, and I think it's going to be hard for anybody to take them out, even if they're traveling to a top 10 opponent on the road. I just have a lot of confidence in this Purdue team, and I think they're going to get the win on the road at Wisconsin. Then we got the one that I'm looking forward to most, the huge rivalry, the Duke UNC game, 6:30 p.m. Saturday on ESPN. UNC is favored by 4. Another top 10 matchup in this rivalry, Duke being number 7 and North Carolina being number 3. Uh, North Carolina actually got upset surprisingly by Georgia Tech earlier in the week. That was a really shocking loss. Duke won at Virginia Tech, so that was great for their confidence. But look, ultimately, it's going to come down to the playmakers outside of the big men. We know what Bacot is capable of. We know what Kyle Filipowski is capable of. But how well will the guards play around them? North Carolina, RJ Davis has been playing at an All American kind of level, and I think he is going to be the one to elevate this North Carolina team in this really essential game for ACC first place. I believe they're both at the top of the standings, so this is really an important game in terms of standings for the ACC. I like what RJ Davis has been doing. I like the way this North Carolina team plays, and I'm going to go with North Carolina to get the win in the big rivalry game. All right, that's all, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Drop your comments down below. What do you think is going to happen on this incredible weekend of college basketball games? It's going to be a fun one. I'm looking forward to watching the games. And thanks, and I'll see you guys in the next one.